Welcome, everybody. My name is David Feith, and I am the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Multilateral Affairs and Regional and Security Policy in the Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. I am very privileged to lead this panel discussion today as part of the Indo-Pacific Business Forum. This panel, Smart Sustainable Cities, will address some of the activities, opportunities, and partners of the U.S.-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership. Joining me today are representatives of U.S. cities and the private sector to talk about U.S. support for smart and sustainable cities in ASEAN. I will introduce them shortly. We very much appreciate them joining. Let me begin by mentioning a bit about the U.S.-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership. The partnership was launched in 2018 by Vice President Pence at the East Asia Summit in Singapore. The partnership is a whole-of-government U.S. effort, with 16 U.S. government departments and agencies working with ASEAN partners to improve essential urban services for ASEAN citizens. We work through some 20 projects to address issues of transportation, water management, energy integration, cybersecurity, and the gig economy, as well as research grants for artificial intelligence, among many other initiatives. In 2019, the trade in goods and services between the United States and the countries of ASEAN was over $354 billion. U.S. direct investment in ASEAN in 2019 reached over $348 billion. There are over 4,000 U.S. companies operating in the ASEAN region, including some 70 leading technology companies, many of whom are helping fuel the digital transformation of ASEAN. One of our leading projects under the U.S.-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership is the establishment of 5 U.S.-ASEAN city pairs to advance sustainable transportation through strong policymaking, and also through technology development, procurement, and planning. The U.S. Department of Transportation is currently convening a 4-part webinar series addressing these issues for stakeholders throughout ASEAN. The transportation planning smart city pairings include Jakarta, Indonesia, with Los Angeles, California, Johor Bahru, Malaysia, and Portland, Oregon, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Dallas, Texas, Phuket, Thailand, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and Phnom Penh, Cambodia, with Boston, Massachusetts. As we all struggle with COVID-19, the U.S.-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership is strengthening the resiliency of local healthcare systems by providing grants in ASEAN cities. Its first project supports a woman-owned business in Cambodia that digitizes medical records in 3 cities that all participate in the ASEAN Smart Cities network. The theme of our panel today, and as reflected by all of our participants, is the range of pillars across the ASEAN Smart City framework. These include competitive economy, sustainable environment, and high quality of life. Our U.S.-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership aims to support the ASEAN Vision 2040 and its quest to harness digital transformation, embrace new technologies, and adopt best practices to achieve a resilient, sustainable, and energy-secure ASEAN, underpinned by good regulatory practice, strong governance, and focused on inclusion and empowerment. We know what a strong priority this digital transformation work is for ASEAN. The statement of the ASEAN heads of state and government in April 2018 on the Fourth Industrial Revolution spoke of the importance that ASEAN leaders and ASEAN communities assign to embracing and adapting to the digital transformation and the Fourth Industrial Revolution as ASEAN grows its economies. The United States is eager to be a strong partner for ASEAN as ASEAN expands its business investments in critical infrastructure, innovative technologies, human resources, and generally promotes a healthy and sustainable quality of life. It is really a privilege to be able to do this panel as part of the Indo-Pacific Business Forum, the third annual Indo-Pacific Business Forum, and to be able to better understand the current landscape for smart cities with this amazingly strong panel of US government leaders, US private sector leaders, and experts to share their experience and knowledge with us. I will introduce each of the panelists quickly one by one, and then be very pleased to hear our panelists' presentations, followed by a discussion. Our first panelist, Verinda Fike, is the Regional Director for the Indo-Pacific of the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Ms. Fike is responsible for developing U.S. TDA's strategy, infrastructure project preparation activities, and innovative public-private partnerships throughout the Indo-Pacific. Ms. Fike has managed projects in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe since 2010. Prior to joining U.S. TDA, Ms. Fike consulted for the U.S. private sector and for the U.S. Agency for International Development on public-private partnerships in developing and emerging economies. She spent 3 years in China, managing patient relations and marketing with the Johns Hopkins Hospital System. Our second panelist, Danielle Lamb, is the manager of the City Possible program at MasterCard. Ms. Lamb is the manager of the City Possible programmatic portfolio and plays a key role in stakeholder engagement and partnership development. Prior to joining MasterCard, Ms. Lamb worked for a number of private sector companies as a government relations manager. MasterCard's City Possible program is a new model for urban innovation in which a global network of cities, businesses, academics, and communities work together to make the world's cities more inclusive and sustainable. City Possible has partnerships with 183 cities globally, of which 40 are in Asean, and we're very keen to learn more about the details. Our next panelist, Karen Frost, is the Vice President for Economic Development at the Milwaukee Water Council. Ms. Frost leads the Water Council's local, national, and international economic development efforts, including leading foreign direct investment and business recruitment initiatives. Ms. Frost managed the Water Council's multi-year U.S. Small Business Administration Regional Innovation Cluster contract, and currently oversees the Council's innovation programs, which support the growth and development of small water technology businesses. Ms. Frost is working with the U.S. Water Partnership and leading our Phuket and Milwaukee city pairing to address water issues in Phuket, including flood management, water treatment, and water reuse. Our final panelist is Chuck Chaitovitz, Vice President for Environmental Affairs and Sustainability at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Chadovitz has more than 25 years of experience addressing environment, water, and energy issues. At the U.S. Chamber, he is launching a new environment and sustainability program to foster unique partnerships among the private sector, government, and civil society organizations. I should add that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has been a superb partner of the U.S. government in the development and implementation of the Indo-Pacific Business Forum over the last 3 years, since we held the first Indo-Pacific Business Forum in Washington, D.C. in the summer of 2018 at the headquarters of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So it's especially nice to have him here representing the Chamber. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to our panelists. I'm going to ask each one to give us a brief introduction about their work in the smart cities space and in how they cooperate with the U.S. ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership, and of course with partners across Southeast Asia. I'd like to start first with Verinda Fike, my colleague from the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Please.
Great, thank you so much, David. And I'm very grateful to be on this panel, with such an esteemed panel of experts. And our agency is very honored to again sponsor this extraordinary forum for the second year in a row. And I want to thank all of our partners, the Chamber, and especially State Department, for their tremendous effort in making this event possible. I'm going to start off with a very brief personal story that connects me to smart cities throughout the Indo-Pacific. Back in 1969, during the height of the Vietnam War, my mother, an American living in Nebraska at the time, traveled to Vietnam to work alongside a set of U.S. physicians where over the course of a year, she vaccinated over 180,000 underprivileged children in southern Vietnam. As a kid growing up in middle America, I loved looking at her photos, seeing her walk barefoot from village to village, from hut to hut, and hearing how she wasn't able to call home for over a year. That's why I was so excited to be able to first visit Vietnam, now over 20 years ago, with these same pictures in my head. And when I touched down in Ho Chi Minh City, this was not at all the same picture in reality. Gone were the huts and rather some of the most stunning high-rise architecture I have ever seen. People were not barefoot, they had the latest and greatest in footwear, and everyone could call anyone in the world on teeny tiny cell phones. And I paint this picture because I think many of us continue to be absolutely astounded how cities like Ho Chi Minh and throughout Asia, as part of the partnership, have modeled leapfrogging technology in a very rapid pace. And now when I travel to Vietnam, or used to prior to the pandemic, we talk extensively on how to make the country's cities even smarter. And this is a topic that I frequently have with partners throughout the entire Indo-Pacific region, and especially in Asean. Because while these advancements should be applauded, there's clearly so much more that we can do. And I think the global pandemic has further uncovered those areas in many cities across the globe that need to adjust and plan for the future. And that's partly what led to USTDA launching a new global infrastructure resilience initiative, which I think is very relevant to today's topic, which is aimed at helping cities plan, finance, procure, and sustain quality infrastructure that will withstand a full range of external risks and challenges. The goal of the initiative is really to allow cities to maintain continuity of operations during disruptions caused by global pandemics, weather, cyber attacks, security events, and other disruptive events that impact economic activity and development. And this initiative draws directly from USTDA's decades-long experience working alongside US industry to deliver quality infrastructure around the world. In the smart city space, USTDA is introducing innovative American tech all across the region. Earlier this year, we supported our first project in Malaysia in over a decade, working to help the Iskandar region develop plans for an urban observatory that's going to help gather and disseminate regional data to support subnational planning and economic development, bringing greater safety, security, and information to citizens in that community. And back to Vietnam, our 2020 Indo-Pacific Business Forum co-host, we're also expanding on more than a decade of cooperation with Ho Chi Minh City by announcing a new project that will strengthen their urban planning efforts through the use of the most innovative data solutions available. This project enhances the delivery of emergency, water, and utility services, creating enhanced safety and management of the city's operations. And we're further partnering with companies like Cisco in places like the Philippines to work with the largest telco in the country, PLDT, to ensure they're 5G ready through our training and assistance, which has also paved the way for significant exports of Cisco's technology and services. And when it is safe to travel, we will expand upon all of this work, working with the ASEAN Smart City Partnership by organizing 5 digital reverse trade missions that will bring delegations from the ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership to the United States. 2 of these visits are going to be focused on cybersecurity for fintech, as well as for utility companies, introducing them to state-of-the-art US technologies, services, and best practices. The other 3 visits will bring ASEAN leaders to the US to introduce them to 5G wireless networks. The missions will build awareness of the potential applications and enabling regulatory environment that can accelerate 5G rollout and enhance security applications. These are just a handful of examples of our work, serving as a bridge between industry and government to promote digital solutions in cybersecurity to our partner cities in ASEAN. One of the key challenges we continue to hear is that while financing is there, it's available for infrastructure projects and smart city projects, there's a shortfall of bankable projects. And that's really where USTDA comes in. We're the only US government agency that works with the private sector to provide American-led solutions at the earliest start, laying the groundwork for quality infrastructure in developing and middle-income countries. We build really lasting relationships with cities in the region and create winning results US companies gain access to new export opportunities, and at the same time, our overseas partners gain insight into the most innovative US solutions to meet their infrastructure goals. And as a result of our effort, we've seen a fairly good return on our investment. For every $1 that we spend, we see $112 back in US exports. And I could also share the development impacts that we're seeing in the region as a result of our assistance. So we know that the future holds even more promise. The importance of the Indo-Pacific strategy and the demand from cities in the region is also why USTDA is doubling our impact in the Indo-Pacific region by funding more projects and by expanding our physical presence throughout the region. We see no greater demand than in the Indo-Pacific region, and we're very excited to continue to find more opportunities that bring the best from the US to our strong partners in cities throughout ASEAN. Thank you for the chance to present, and I'll hand it over to my next colleague.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Verinda. There's a lot of extremely valuable information there. We'd like to go now to Danielle Lamb at MasterCard.
Yes, so I can share a little bit about City Possible. And I really invite anyone from ASEAN and anyone really in Asia Pacific to join the network. It is completely free. It's a valuable collaboration tool to use. It's just another resource kit for you. So City Possible is a global network of 183 cities globally now. 40 of them are in ASEAN, majority of them being in Thailand and Singapore. And the whole premise of City Possible is to foster innovation for everyday municipal problems. So cities worldwide really face very similar issues: high traffic, growing homelessness, growth of cost of housing, etc. These are all shared issues. And so there's no reason to recreate the wheel for these types of solutions when you can really share and lean across the world and depend on our network. So Harvard is our academic partner in this, and they facilitate much of the collaboration between the cities. And I know David mentioned places like Los Angeles, Dallas, Las Vegas, all part of the City Possible network. And so if LA, for example, Mayor Garcetti was spearheading and pioneering a new solution, you can log in to your City Possible forum. You get logins for you and your staff, and get very tactical with the LA team and find out, how are they doing this? What are they doing? And really just to learn and scale solutions that have already been created. And so that's really the power of City Possible, and ultimately up to you as a city leader to lean in as much as you want or lean out. If you would just like to check in with the forum and get connected directly with Mayor Garcetti's staff, you can log in and do that. If you would like to lean in all the way and co-develop something with MasterCard and lean on our tech and our solutions to create a tech solution for a municipal problem and challenge that you have, that's open as well. So, truly believe in the power of collaboration and welcome cities to join City Possible.
Wonderful. Thanks, Danielle, for that. Our next panelist is Karen Frost from the Milwaukee Water Council.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me to participate in the panel today. I don't have a story like Verinda did about connection to the ASEAN area, but I would have looked forward to having to visit Phuket this last summer. And of course, with the COVID situation happening, that wasn't to have been, but we look forward to continuing our video environment and video relationship. I wanted to share a little bit about the Water Council and our role in the ASEAN partnership with Phuket. We're a nonprofit, globally connected membership organization bringing together freshwater research, innovation, investor groups, and business development. We're based in Wisconsin, but we have a global focus and reach. Our organization is part of the Global Water Tech Hub Alliance, connecting us with other global hubs in the Netherlands, in Israel, Singapore, South Korea, and China. And in fact, we have a European representative that engages with water innovation partners and groups throughout Europe to build innovation pathways and partnerships. And of course, we've now engaged with the ASEAN WISE program through the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Water Partnership, and the Water Environment Federation to link our organization and the Milwaukee drinking water and wastewater utilities with Phuket. Central to our role and focus is serving as a freshwater innovation technology partner and catalyst and connector for our stakeholder and those seeking solutions. I oftentimes describe our role as the Match.com in water tech. We work with utilities, academia, city and state government, global partners, as well as industry to make meaningful connections. An example of a partnership intersecting with one of our programs is our pilot program and local strategic partner with one of the Phuket partners, which is the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, or MMSD. Through this pilot program in Milwaukee, we extend an annual call for application for demonstration sites, technical assistance, and funding to pilot and validate emerging technologies in Wisconsin. One funding and strategic partner for that is MMSD, and the utility provides funding to the Water Council to support projects to advance their technology interests. Many of the prior pilot rounds have focused on inviting applications to pilot and test technologies which support green infrastructure goals. MMSD as a utility is dedicated to green infrastructure applications. And since they're a combined system for sewer and stormwater, it's essential for them to capture and treat as much stormwater as possible where it falls. In fact, their stated goal in their 2035 mission is to use green infrastructure to capture the first half an inch of rainfall across their entire service area. They've had much success with green infrastructure deployments such as green roofs, rain barrels, bioswales, and combined with their deep tunnel system that can hold and store 521 million gallons of water in a storm event. The more than 25 miles of deep tunnel allows the utility to temporarily store stormwater and wastewater to be able to treat it later before it's discharged. The deep tunnels have prevented more than 125 billion gallons of pollution from getting into Lake Michigan. And thanks to the tunnels and other improvements, MMSD has captured and cleaned 98.4% of all the stormwater and wastewater that's entered the regional sewer system since 1994. The goal nationally is to capture and clean 85% for more than 700 cities that have combined sewer systems. The deep tunnel is one topic of particular area of interest from Phuket, and we've been having early conversations with Phuket between MMSD and ourselves that there's been early interest in having a deep tunnel feasibility study in the region to be able to capture and store water for later use. We have other innovation-focused programs that link to sustainability. We actually offer a post-accelerator program where we're working with startup companies to help them equip them with the training and the skills that they need to bring new technology to market. And that's really where the Water Council has an intersection. So not only working with our local utilities and industry, but trying to serve in that critical link of serving entrepreneurs and being able to bring forward those technologies that can address some of the world's greatest stresses in terms of water quality and quantity. And that's one of the areas that's the key component to our relationship with Phuket, and one that we really look forward to unpacking in future months and over the next couple of years through that partnership.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Karen. Over to Chuck Chaitovitz to speak about the work of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thanks.
Well, wow, a very impressive group of projects for my fellow panelists. Thank you to David and the State Department and my fellow panelists for including the Chamber in the Indo-Pacific Business Forum. We very much appreciate it. As many of you know, the Chamber is the largest business trade association in the world, representing companies of all sizes and sectors, and also including our federation comprised of our member trade associations and our state and local chambers. I like to say we're at the confluence of companies and communities here in the US. In a previous life, I did spend a great deal of time in the region managing water projects, focusing on nutrient industrial management and clean water access. I've always valued that experience and share the passion of my colleagues on the panel for building economic prosperity across the vast region of diverse countries. ASEAN countries have an ambitious smart cities program, as David mentioned, and sustainability goals to meet local economic needs and their SDG commitments. The region's burgeoning population means lack of basic services, so sustainable solutions are needed for energy, food, water security across the region. The Chamber has made modernizing, like TDA, modernizing P3s and resilient infrastructure, which includes smart infrastructure as a top priority. Unlocking innovation and investment in improving the built environment, transportation, wastewater, and other related issues are critical to this effort. You've heard that there are distinct differences in water challenges among the countries, but the common issues of heavy monsoon flooding to drought seasons with little available water and lack of wastewater management results in ongoing public health and water access crises in these countries. It's estimated that food production will have to increase by 70 to 100% to keep pace with population growth, putting more stress on the region's finite water resources. The Chamber is a public policy advocacy organization representing the principles of free enterprise across the globe. Our largest division focuses on international issues where we engage in every region and country in the world through our international division and our network of non-affiliated AmChams. We have many bilateral and multilateral business councils that are specifically charged with working with governments on pro-business policies, including our U.S.-India Business Council and the Southeast Asia Regional Team, which had brought the ASEAN Forum to the Chamber a couple of years ago. We're well positioned to work with all of you and our members to bring the policy and practical solutions forward that you all are discussing. In 2016, Asia Development Bank report, Strengthening Water Security in the Region. Such an approach will comprise enabling regulatory environment, developing strong and capable water sector institutions, and robust management system, and investments in the sector. An example of enabling regulatory environment would be phasing out of free or subsidized power provided to agriculture sector in India that has resulted in overexploitation of groundwater resources. I wanted to provide a little perspective on how we approach the issue raised in the ASEAN Smart Cities Initiative and some of the challenges facing engagement of the business community. As my colleagues on the panel have mentioned, the strategic plan is divided into focus areas and enablers. Issues of environment and infrastructure are not mutually exclusive, but are very connected. The enablers of partnerships and funding and technology and digital solutions are aligned with a set of engineering and consulting and manufacturing and smart technology member companies working in the region. And we're very excited about the opportunity to continue to engage on these issues. One example that I'd like to highlight is on solid waste. The Chamber can bring more solid waste management firms to the region to address significant challenges. Solid waste management impacts water and other sustainability issues. Ocean plastics that originates from land-based sources, and investments in infrastructure are needed. USAID recently announced a fund along with Circulate Capital, a U.S. impact investment firm, to make investments in recycling infrastructure, especially in Southeast Asia. We're supporting the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act, which will expand NOAA's domestic marine debris authorities to reach internationally, because we know more innovation is needed from the private sector to address this issue. On water access, the region has a predominance of lower business tendering norms, calling the least selected method, where the bidder quoting the lowest price wins the contract. This is a barrier to broader private sector participation and smarter high-tech solutions. There are alternatives to overcome deficiencies in this process, which does not give enough weight to quality parameters. Criteria for quality should be considered. For example, water reuse projects may be more expensive, but they are in the long-term sustainable benefits to local water management. I know my fellow panelists from Milwaukee and TDA raised the upcoming feasibility study of the possible deep tunnel solutions to the wastewater management storage issues in Thailand. Such solutions for flood management benefit from being coupled with nature-based solutions, including bioretention parks, the reinforcements of sustainability and cost effectiveness of gray infrastructure projects, and demonstration of innovation, including natural capital. There are also kinds of solutions and the kinds of work that the private sector companies can bring to this region. I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up, and thanks for the opportunity to provide you with this information.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chuck, and thanks to everyone for that really very interesting cross-section of your work and its interactions with the Smart Cities Partnership and with communities in Southeast Asia. I think that as we have this discussion over virtual video format in a way that we probably could not have imagined just a few months ago or last year, I'm inclined to ask for everyone's thoughts around the horn here on what lessons have been learned this year from the COVID-19 pandemic that have informed your work in general, your work with the Asean Smart Cities Partnership, your work with Southeast Asian partners, with the sorts of challenges that are essential to the partnership and to making it succeed, whether on the tech side or the innovation side, the international engagement side. I think that obviously the questions of COVID management, COVID lessons learned, the way that COVID might change things going forward, including in certain ways possibly for the better with new tech solutions or different practices in the way we work. I think it'd be very interesting to know how this is informing the work of each of you, both at home in the United States and in Southeast Asia. Why don't we go in the same order that we went in? I'll throw it to Verinda first. Thanks.
Great, thanks, David. I think it's a very fascinating question, and the technology is changing very rapidly in response to COVID. And I think a few things come to mind in terms of now what our cities are asking for in terms of contact tracing, which is a technology that wasn't really pre-thought of before, and having that be part of the operations center projects that we're looking at. Artificial intelligence, U.S. companies are very competitive in this area, and bringing that type of technology, tracking for the contact tracing, and obviously, I think just a stronger realization that there needs to be a more coordinated national strategy among cities. Actually, just this week, not in ASEAN, but in India, we are awarding a grant for the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for basically a central data base for all smart cities throughout India. And I think that's what we're going to see more of for countries to be more coordinated in the response across the nation, but it really starts with the city. And we've seen how cities do it well. And I think we've learned a lot. And some cities were certainly better prepared than they were on a national level. But those are a few things that come to mind that we have noticed in terms of additional requests for, and that we're trying to be responsive to.
Fantastic. Thanks, Verinda. Danielle, for the MasterCard perspective.
Yeah, so City Possible is heavily involved in helping cities recover and respond to COVID-19. And, these leaders are the boots on the ground. These are folks that are in charge of setting up testing sites, of getting emergency subsidies out to residents. So we work diligently with a number of cities to get emergency COVID money out to residents who need it most immediately for rent relief, for groceries, for things like that. And so I think what we're going to see is probably two big trends. Is one, the advancement and acceleration of digitization, and that the digital divide is growing and it's going to be apparent more than ever. And so we learn from home, we work from home, and if you don't have access to those tools, you will be left behind. And so I think making sure to grow inclusively is going to be important as ever right now for cities. And that's something that MasterCard worked diligently with. Even in the US, just getting federal subsidies out there were some residents, maybe undocumented residents or domestic violence survivors, for example, or communities we work with that weren't able to get the subsidies for whatever reason. And so that is a snapshot of communities that are getting left behind. And so I would encourage you as leaders in ASEAN cities to think about growing inclusively. I think that's really important. And I would say the second piece is to rethink tourism. I know tourism is a big piece of your economy and strategy, and something that we're doing right now with Singapore is to rethink how we can create this seamless tourist experience in Singapore. So how can you make it contactless? How can you create a safer environment for tourists? How can you create a more seamless experience between getting off the plane, going through customs, going to the Singapore Zoo and major hotels? And these are things that we can help strategize with you and think through. These ideas are really born out of workshops that we've hosted with Singapore leaders. And it's certainly something we can do with your city as part of the City Possible network.
Very interesting. Thanks for that. Karen, how does all this look from Milwaukee?
Sure. I'll offer a couple of perspectives, I guess, just for water in general. And, that is that, I think COVID has really amplified the needs and brought the spotlight on water resources, because never has there been such a time that water resources are so dependent upon for safety and security. But at the same time, with, plants shutting down, industrial plants and so on, it's created revenue stresses with different utilities because, water resources aren't being used as much. Office buildings are, stagnant. And so there needs to be a protocol that's followed, in restarting up a building to make sure that, that water resources are safely delivered to residents. But again, I think it's really brought a spotlight on our water infrastructure. And when I say I mean global water infrastructure, but certainly in the United States, that, the water infrastructure is aging or it has aged. And so it's only the COVID situation is really magnifying sometimes the issues around water infrastructure and our aging water infrastructure. But at the same time, I guess on the flip side, water technology innovation is never more important. So the demand and the necessity of water technology innovations and solutions has not been diminished because of COVID. I think it's all the more at the forefront. And so I think it still is a critical issue and one that can be, solved even in times of COVID.
Thanks for that. Chuck.
Great question, and really enjoyed the answers. I would say, at no time in our history is building modern, resilient infrastructure that addresses kind of the lifelines of cities like water, energy, health, and so forth more important. How can we help prepare ahead of the next crisis or disaster? And resilience is the key word, and it's an amorphous concept that is, it's sometimes challenging to understand what it means. But the idea of hardening the way in which we build planning ahead of the next time that we have to act, that's all very important for companies and for the communities across the planet. And technology is an important part of that. So how do we make our decisions smarter and more efficient going forward? How do they save money so that the investment that we make up front can be more effective and have more return on investment for the business community? Those are the kinds of things we're thinking about. An example here at home is about 65% of small businesses across America don't have contingency plans in place to address disaster response. So the idea that we need to help companies plan ahead, and this, in the ASEAN region is no different. I think that's that's an important part of what we need to do, and technology will play a role in doing that.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I want to get the thoughts from around the panel on another thread that has come up in really across the discussion in terms of the work that you all do in technology, in training, in outreach to a range of partners, officials and regulators and others. And that is the theme of human capital development. This is a major theme across the Indo-Pacific work of the U.S. government. Certainly, this is work certainly at an agency like USTDA in terms of procurement practices and arranging trade missions and reverse trade missions, so that the experts in things like municipal infrastructure management from Southeast Asian partner countries are coming to the United States. I think there's a similar program that involves also our Japanese partners in this sort of training. I know that MasterCard and U.S. companies generally, represented by the Chamber, do an enormous amount of human capital development in Southeast Asia and in the Indo-Pacific, digital upskilling, promotion of women's entrepreneurship, and all sorts of things that relate to workforces, relate to academic partners in the region and in the United States. I'd be curious what our panelists would emphasize about the human capital part of their work as it relates to the Smart Cities Partnership in Southeast Asia. We'll go in the same order. Verinda, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. Thanks, David. No, it's a great question. And I want to pick up on the thread that Chuck laid out too in terms of procurement, and you yourself, David, because that is a real challenge for U.S. companies in a lot of these markets. And one of the ways that USDA has addressed this challenge is through our Global Procurement Initiative, which was launched several years ago, and we've since trained over 500 procurement officials throughout the Indo-Pacific region to help procurement officials look at best value as opposed to lowest cost, to look at life cycle cost analysis as opposed to just going after the lowest bid offer. And this is a real barrier for U.S. companies, and I think especially at the municipal level, these are generally, mayors feel under pressure to do the right thing, and there's often a fear of getting punished if they go for something that's not the lowest bid, that there's, accusations of corruption. So it's really training officials of how to look at the whole life cycle costs of the project. So they're not going to have to switch it out again in 2 years, that it's actually really built to last. And so that is really critical. Cities are very interested in this topic throughout the world. We've seen really bad practices of how this is done globally from other partners, not the US. But this is a topic that, yes, partners like Japan and Australia, we are partnering with them to level the playing field so that all firms have a chance to play fairly.
Fantastic. Thank you. And to Danielle.
Yeah, so I would say around the upskilling and the thought leadership piece is something MasterCard is really invested into. So as I mentioned, we partner with Harvard, and we host typically in a normal times. We have 30 convenings globally, and those convenings are really based and dictated by what's important to cities. So we will talk about waste reduction that was important, or we will talk about 5G, or we will talk about the future of work, which is another huge focus for us, is how can we support the growing gig economy, the gig worker, how can we create safety nets for them and how can they get the benefits as like a traditional company would provide benefits to a worker. So thinking through portable benefits and what that may look like. And so the Ubers and Etsy's, et cetera, of the world, how can they create these safety nets and benefits like 401k, healthcare, and simple gym perks for these gig workers that we so depend on. That's become really apparent during this pandemic. So yeah, I would say the thought leadership piece is huge. And if there is interest in joining any of these conversations, of course, as a city leader, you're welcome to. In fact, we're having a City Possible Summit coming up on November 10th, which I will be sure to circulate the information around. But again, open to everyone, and we will talk about some of these issues, such as the future of work, if that's of interest for you as a city leader.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Karen.
So I'll talk just a little bit about, the human capital element. We've not really gone very deeply into our relationship with Phuket as of yet. I mean, the initial meetings we've had have really been more focused on very basic elements of having thought exchange and where the relationship would best go. I know that the future vision of that is that there would be some knowledge sharing opportunities and so on. But one of the things that the Water Council has been involved with is just creating awareness of career opportunities in the water space, right? So whatever that would look like, from water technology, science and STEM fields, or, waste and drinking water management. I don't think there's a lot of awareness about water as a career. And so we've just been trying to build awareness of opportunities that exist in the field, because, I mean, just like in many industries, there's talk of the gray tsunami, right? A lot of experts and, people with a lot of institutional knowledge in the area of water and water technology and water management, kind of being poised to retire out. And there's really not those experienced people to follow up behind. So certainly we're cognizant of it, but there's a big gap to meet. And so anyway, I think that may be a topic that we talk about with our friends in Phuket, but I think it's something down the path.
Very interesting. Thanks for that. Chuck, please.
Would love to build on Karen's good comments on the graying tsunami especially in the tech fields and in the water and energy sectors. Our CEO Tom Donahue likes to say that 95% of the customers for U.S. companies are outside the United States. So we really need to begin to build awareness of U.S. companies and engage in the world, and that's really what the chamber and our team on the International Vision are doing. I would say that as a policy advocacy organization and focusing in the water space, one thing that happened recently, and I hope you do know about it, is the executive order that was just released the other day on the water subcabinets. More interagency coordination across the federal government on water, including on issues around workforce development. And so very exciting opportunity to have the federal family working together with companies, with organizations like the Water Council, to work on these important issues, because without everybody pulling in the same direction, we're not going to be able, there aren't enough workers to fill these positions. And so we really need, everybody working in the same direction.
Very interesting. We are coming near to our time. So why don't we do a bit of a lightning round here? If there was one thing that each of you would want our viewers in Southeast Asia and around the Indo-Pacific to do or to know when it comes to the smart, sustainable cities issue, when it comes to the work that you do, what in brief would that be? Verinda, why don't you
Sure, I'll be brief. I think the one thing is, our door is open. We have funding availability. Our focus right now really is on resiliency. And I think that's an important thread for all cities in the ASEAN network. And we would be more than delighted to introduce you to U.S. solutions that could help you meet your challenges.
Great. That was lightning fast. Danielle.
So I would encourage all of you to join the City Possible Network. It's completely free. It's such an easy lift for you and your staff. citypossible.com, drop us an inquiry. It's a very simple MOU, no cost, no exclusivity. It's strictly an opportunity for you to learn and collaborate with other cities worldwide. And I think if it's anything that we've learned, a lot of these challenges affects all of us. You know, COVID doesn't know any boundaries. And so what you're dealing with in your city is very likely a city that is also going through the same thing in Europe or in the US or in Canada, et cetera. So I hope that you join us.
Thanks, Danielle. Karen, over to you.
I would just stress just the importance of water, and the fact that, the Water Council really exists to help bring visibility and connections to, important technologies, passionate people, and great thought leaders in the field of water. And it's a team that is just driven to help make that conversation and that activity easy.
Fantastic. And Chuck.
Well, I don't know if I deserve it of the last word, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I would just say, in addition to the good words of my colleagues, is encouraging policies that might support public-private partnerships that unlock innovation and as well as financial capital that'll help kind of push some of these ideas forward. So I really appreciate the chance to be here with you.
Perfect. Well, that is a good last word from the panel, and from my end, I certainly want the last word to be one of thanks to the panelists, to everyone who has partnered on the Indo-Pacific Business Forum, certainly to our Vietnamese partners who are working with us virtually and from Hanoi and elsewhere, to the partners from the business community, certainly, and as an upside of our peculiar and difficult COVID environment, everyone who's been able to watch this online, where we can bring these subjects to a larger scale than if perhaps we were all only in one place. So with that, I'll thank again all of our panelists and all of our partners in the U.S.-ASEAN Smart City Partnership, and we'll look forward to working with everyone virtually and in Southeast Asia going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.